Hello YouTube and welcome back to another video. So I wanted to try to do a different style of video today than what I normally do. And I just wanted to talk about the future of Metal Gear Solid because despite what most people in the gaming community may think, I believe Metal Gear Solid can continue as a series without its original creator at the helm. So in this video I will explore all possible routes of where I think this series is heading and what I personally want to see out of the series as a longtime fan. But before we can talk about the future, we need to back up and talk about the present and what's going on with its publisher right now. So, Metal Gear Solid's publisher, which is Konami, has made some very dumb and questionable decisions throughout the years with their gaming division. And what I'm referring to is the fallout and mistreatment of Hideo Kojima, a very weird reconstructuring that was going on in the was going on internally within the company that moved away from AAA game development and focused primarily on mobile gaming and gambling. And lastly, the mismanagement of beloved franchises such as Metal Gear Solid and Silent Hill. As a fan of Konami and these franchises, this was just a very heartbreaking thing to experience and go through. I will never forget when I first saw the remade cutscenes for Metal Gear Solid 3 in the Fox engine and being absolutely mind blown with how amazing it looked. And I wanted that in a remake when I first seen that, only to find out that it was being used for a pachinko machine in Japan. And in 2018, when Konami released Metal Gear Survive, which was a very strange survival adventure game that felt nothing like Metal Gear at all. And this game honestly just felt soulless and was basically a cash grab thrown together real quick by leftover assets from the Fox engine, with Metal Gear slapped on the box just to make a quick buck, and to capitalize on current trends in the industry. Metal Gear Survive was a big fat middle finger to longtime fans. Myself, alongside many other fans, were very pissed and we felt betrayed by Konami during this time. The only thing I felt like Konami was doing right with their major franchises back then was licensing out the Castlevania IP to Netflix because we got a killer anime series out of it. But other than that, that's about the only good thing that came from Konami during that time frame. But now things are a little bit different because despite Konami's failures, they've been experiencing a resurgence this generation by pivoting back into AAA game development and giving their major franchises a much needed shot in the arm. Like Silent Hill, for instance. It has made a huge comeback in a very big way with a remake of Silent Hill 2, which, by the way, is another very good remake. And I will eventually do a video on that game because I want to talk about Silent Hill 2 on this channel. And a brand new entry called Silent Hill F, which introduces a lot of new concepts and ideas that pushes the series forward in a lot of unique ways. Both of these games have done extremely well, with both fans and critics singing their praises alike, and both games have sold extremely well also, despite being dormant for so long. Silent Hill 2 also has a very big movie adaptation, which is about to release in January of 2026, which I really hope that movie delivers because Silent Hill 2 is just such a beautiful piece of fiction that has the potential to translate really well into a movie if it's handled properly and if it's not screwed up. But enough about Silent Hill, let's shift the focus back to Metal Gear. So Delta just released back in August and it was a really good remake, which I had already done a video on, and you should totally check that out if you haven't already. The reviews for it were also really solid as well. No pun intended whatsoever. And last time I checked, the sales were pretty good, sitting at a hefty 1 million units sold since launch, which is a very good sign because it shows that there's still huge interest in the Metal Gear IP. So now that I've caught you all up to speed on the current state of Konami and where the series is at right now, we can finally talk about where I think the series is heading and what I think Konami will release next in the Metal Gear series. So, despite what some may think, I highly doubt that Konami will jump into making Metal Gear Solid 6. Konami still has a lot to prove to the fans, and I think they'll just keep it simple and straightforward right now and work on remasters and remakes because I just think this is the smartest thing to do, and you slowly regain trust this way. I don't think you can do what's working right now with Silent Hill, like a remake, then a brand new game, and apply that to Metal Gear, because Metal Gear is a little bit more of a delicate franchise that you have to work with. So here's what I think Konami will do next. I think Konami will eventually release the Master Collection Volume 2 sometime here real soon. This could be in 2026. And I think Metal Gear Solid 4 will be the main selling point. I think this should be the next big priority because gamers need to be able to experience Metal Gear from start to finish all on one platform. And it's just about time that Metal Gear Solid 3 leaves PS3 purgatory. After that, though, I think it's obvious. I think we're going to keep getting remakes in the style of Delta. And I believe that the next remake that we will get is of Peace Walker. So, in case you don't know about Peace Walker, Peace Walker was originally released on the PSP back in 2010, and then it was remastered for the HD collection back in 2011. And I just think Peace Walker could honestly use a next gen remake like Snake Eater. Peace Walker just makes the most sense to me right now to remake next because it's a continuation of Big Boss's story, and it serves as a prequel to a lot of the major events that happened in Metal Gear Solid 5. And I feel like Peace Walker would translate easier with Delta's new gameplay style compared to like Metal Gear Solid 1 and 2. And speaking of that, you may be wondering when I think Konami will remake Metal Gear Solid 2 and Metal Gear Solid 1. I think they will eventually get remade, but I don't think that they will take priority right now. I feel like when Konami does decide to remake Metal Gear Solid 1 and 2, it will have to be similar to recent Resident Evil remakes because I don't think the gameplay will translate as well to the new style that Delta introduced. And I'm not sure how that's going to work, but I'm really eager to find out how Konami will tackle it. I just hope at that point Konami is confident enough to create a more ambitious remake and take more creative risk. Like, take a moment and imagine a hypothetical Metal Gear Solid 1 and 2 remakes with expanded content that improves the overall continuity to the game, and a remake that brings back cut content that originally couldn't make it in due to time constraints or hardware limitations. And I'll give you a good example of this. So remember that playable segment in Metal Gear Solid 2 during the tanker chapter when Solid Snake is escaping the tanker and it was being flooded at the end? Um, Imagine if that was fully restored and that was a playable segment of the game. Or imagine in these hypothetical remakes I'm throwing at you, imagine fully realized scenes of how Liquid Snake took over Foxhound in Metal Gear Solid 1. Or imagine in Metal Gear Solid 2 seeing a more fleshed out backstory for Solid as Snake and how he was manipulated by the Patriots and a more fleshed out relationship with Raiden. There's just so much that Konami can do by taking a more ambitious and creative route with these remakes. And it's just exciting to me just sitting here and describing all of this out to you guys. Now everyone and now every not everyone, excuse me. Now everything that I mentioned up to this point is stuff that I'm fairly confident that Konami will eventually do. But I want to throw some ideas out there to you guys of what I'd like to see from the series, maybe even my ideal Metal Gear Solid 6. But first, if Konami ever decides that they want to make a new entry instead of a remake, I'd love to see a Metal Gear Solid 5. I would love to see Metal Gear Solid 5 get a sequel that ties directly into the MSX games. When Metal Gear Solid 5 first got announced, I was so excited because I figured that this was where we was going to see the creation of Outer Heaven and an introduction to a young Solid Snake. But unfortunately, we never got to see any of that. Metal Gear Solid 5's story was a huge letdown for me, especially during its second half. And I know a lot of this has to do with the split between Konami and Kojima, but now that the dust has settled between the two of them, and if Konami is confident enough to jump back into the series, I think this would be a good starting point to jump in at and just tie up some loose ends within the series. And while we're on the topic of those MSX games, I would love to see them get remade. Now, I know that it's going to be a little bit trickier remaking those games because that would honestly fall alongside new game territory because there's just so much that would have to be created from the ground up, and it would honestly be totally different from the originals. So let's move on now to my final game idea, and this is something that I have dreamed about for a really long time. for almost well over a decade when I first played Snake Eater. And if Metal Gear Solid 6 was to ever happen, this is what I want it to be. And I've always had this fascination of a Metal Gear Solid game that is a prequel to Metal Gear Solid 3, starring the boss and her cobras. As I mentioned in my review of Metal Gear Solid Delta, one of the many standout characters was the boss and her cobra unit. Every time I replay Metal Gear Solid 3 and the boss talks about her time with the cobras during World War II, I just sit there and imagine what a game would be like with them, and I'm just imagining these events playing out in an actual mainline Metal Gear game. Like imagine where you play as the boss and you get to mentor a young naked snake, and together you develop CQC. And imagine witnessing the boss form the Cobras in during World War II and seeing a cutscene of how they got their supernatural abilities. And just imagine how awesome it would be if we got to the climax of this game and the boss is having to finish her mission by killing her lover, the Sorrow. That would just be so cool to see and would honestly make her death in Metal Gear Solid 3 even more impactful if we got a game centered around her. I do think Metal Gear Solid can and should continue without Hideo Kojima. I don't think the series should just stop with new entries just because Kojima isn't there. And I think there's still plenty of stories left to tell in this universe. And I'm also a firm believer that Metal Gear Solid should branch out to other forms of media besides video games, such as movies, TV shows, and anime. But maybe I can make a video about that another day if that's something you guys want to see. So I think that wraps up my video today, but be sure to let me know down in the comments what your ideal Metal Gear Solid game will be. Thank you for watching my video, and you have a nice day.